Friends, the Kremlin has stated that they view such an approach positively as the beginning of direct contacts between the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United States of America. Today, Peskov made this statement. He says that the work of the trilateral group on Ukraine will continue. There is an agreement on this. He confirms that the next trilateral meeting will take place, as Volodymyr Zelensky said, on February 1st. The trilateral negotiations on Ukraine are complicated, and they are being conducted at a highly professional and expert level. Moreover, today, the high-ranking presidential aide to Vladimir Putin, Yuri Ushakov, personally and entirely on his own initiative, without anyone even asking him a single question, approached the state propagandist Zarubin and started providing detailed comments on the story regarding a potential personal meeting between Putin and Zelensky. That is exactly how the situation is unfolding right now, you see? Let's listen.
Allow me to provide a more detailed commentary regarding the official statement he recently issued, suggesting that President Zelensky is fully prepared and willing to engage in a direct meeting with the President of Russia. This question is not new to us. By the way, it was discussed several times during phone conversations between our President, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, and US President Trump. And during these conversations, Trump in particular suggested that we consider such a possibility. And our approach, it seems, is quite logical. And Vladimir Vladimirovich has discussed this topic several times while talking to journalists. And the essence of our approach is that we have never refused and will never refuse such contacts. The main thing is that these contacts are well prepared. That's the first point. And the second fundamental point is that they should be aimed at achieving tangible, constructive, and positive outcomes. Furthermore, the president of our Russian Federation has also stated several times when speaking with journalists that if Zelensky is truly ready for such a meeting, then we, by all means, we extend a formal invitation for him to visit to Moscow. And at the same time, we will guarantee the security of everything and provide all the necessary conditions for work.
Well, you see, it creates a very distinct and strong impression that right now, in this very moment, somewhere, Vladimir Putin, along with his team of official negotiators, are being heavily pressured. Moreover, the statement, it seems to me, was just prepared, meticulously and absolutely prepared in advance, and even the state propagandists themselves weren't ready for it. Zarubin, whom you see on the left side of the frame, his ear and a bit of his glasses, is essentially Putin's shadow, the person who follows him everywhere and travels with him, and who never asks random questions. And here, Ushakov says, with your permission, I'd like to comment on something. And he goes ahead and comments on Putin's meeting with Donetskaya, a topic that was completely taboo, that was dismissed outright for quite a long time, and quite seriously so. Now, it is absolutely no longer dismissed. Even earlier, 2 days ago, we had Sibiha, who is our Minister of Foreign Affairs, gave an in-depth interview, and that's also extremely rare. Sibiha in an in-depth interview, and with whom, no less? European Pravda. Well, I mean, that's an affiliated story, part of Ukrainska Pravda. Sevgil Musaeva, Tkach, all those people, the president's office, come on. And here comes the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the president's man, appearing before the journalists of European Pravda, giving a 250-page interview from both sides. These pages are written, and he tells how it turns out in Abu Dhabi, the Russian delegation never once read anything to the Ukrainians. And for the first time, they gave the Americans a lecture on a historical topic, and to themselves as well, saying they've changed. But what happened? Why? So let's put it this way. In the language of diplomacy, this is a complimentary tone. It's a complimentary tone. Right now, one of the nuances of this tone comes from the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the head of the Ukrainian MFA. And here's Ushakov, and here's Peskov, and here they all are together, reporting in unison that something is happening. And something is happening, something that even Putin and Zelensky are now ready to meet about. Although there is one, as the Russians say, a catch. Someone is coming to Moscow. Well, it's funny, of course, isn't it? So in the end, it all comes to nothing. But the rhetoric itself is very interesting. And what does Ushakov refer to when he invites Zelensky to Moscow? He refers to that interview with Sibiha. And what did Sibiha talk about in that interview? Let me just give you two excerpts. The interview is called Peace Negotiations, Plans for NATO, the EU, and the Conflict with Orban. A major interview with Minister Sibiha, and then there's an introduction saying that Sibiha generally never gives any interviews, but everyone is paying attention to this one. And, well, if there's any sarcasm here, it's actually quite good quality. So what does Sibiha say? If we talk specifically about this 20-point framework, it's about the agreement, at least that's what he says. Right now, it's a bilateral document that will be signed by the US and Ukraine. And the US is supposed to sign it with Russia as well. At the moment, this is the structure being discussed, but negotiations are still ongoing. It's a process. So the meeting and this one. This whole complementary story from a diplomatic point of view is most likely connected to the fact that there will be two documents, friends. Two documents. The first document is between Ukraine and the US, and the second document between the United States and the Russian Federation. That's exactly why there was a sense of ease. Here is a huge explanation for why this is happening. Oh, come on, let's meet. Oh, come on, this format is really great. Ukraine, Russia, the US, it's just awesome. Why? Because there are two documents. Two documents, not one. Two. Moving on. The European side is coming up with its own ideas. With us, it is present in the peace process and in the agreements on security guarantees. By the way, it's important that for the first time, we're talking specifically about the term security guarantees, not assurances or something similar. It is also fundamentally important that there are core elements which are crucial for Ukraine and our security that have a legal and binding nature. That is why it is important that there is agreement on the need to ratify the guarantees, in particular, to ratify them in Congress of the United States. There is another fundamentally important point. Boots on the ground, meaning the presence of foreign troops, literally boots on the ground. Well, that's what Sibiha is saying, right? And then there's a journalist question, a detailed one, right? Are we counting on signing a 20-point peace plan? Yes, Sibiha says, provided that it is agreed upon. Because as you know, it still remains unagreed. The most sensitive issue. And the journalist clarifies, as I understand it, the issue of territories and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Yes, says Sibiha, these two issues. It is precisely to resolve them that the president is ready to meet with Putin and discuss this. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the territorial issue. Can you imagine Zelensky meeting with Putin in Moscow to discuss the territorial issue? No tableware, no silverware should be given in this room. Well, can you imagine that? That will never happen. And that's exactly why this part contradicts the first part about two agreements, two documents, and the territorial issue will most likely be resolved in exchange for something else. A much more significant issue, far more important than the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, is the issue of territory. And so the issue of territory. Right now, there is a lot of criticism. It's just pouring in from everywhere. And so Julian Rapka, a German-built commentator, writes the following as well. He joined this debate, pointing out that Ukraine is actually being steered towards something rather vague. Citing various recent publications in the renowned Financial Times, the influential New York Times, and the international news agency Reuters, which today explicitly wrote that Ukraine is indeed being offered a specific option, where first comes a formal agreement, a preliminary deal, and only then followed by robust security guarantees. Furthermore, the United States government is not currently dictating to the nation of Ukraine what the specific content or terms of the final peace agreement should be. This has never been an issue at all of discussion. As if Washington is trying to force Ukraine to make real concessions to Russia in exchange for some security guarantees. That is not the case. That's what Reuters wrote today. But there is indeed a question at hand. That Ukraine has to sign a peace agreement, and only then will it receive security guarantees. Then here, guys, yes, this is the essence of the whole story. So some kind of territorial agreements with Putin in Moscow. And look, that's exactly right. Here's the Russian translation. No one on this planet seriously believes that Donald Trump would start a war against Vladimir Putin. If in 2027 the latter decides, and that's an important date for the Germans, they've calculated it there, what could happen? A conflict with NATO decides that the Russian territory of Zaporizhzhia must be liberated. from Ukrainian terrorist attacks against Russians who are there. Do you understand? Ryabko paints this kind of philosophy, and absolutely no one is paying attention to any of this. Absolutely no one. Donald Trump isn't paying attention either. But the rhetoric of the representatives, the negotiators, is already changing. Theoretically, even if we assume that there is now a ceasefire on these two key issues, the ZNPP in particular, and the territory regarding the ZNPP. Yes, there are certain developments regarding the ZNPP, regarding the possibility that energy generation could be split 50-50 in the future after the war between Russia and, accordingly, Ukraine. No one will give 100% control of the NPP to Ukraine. A 50-50 split would be considered a victory in a way. What about the territory? As for the territory, well, as I told you, a personal meeting, well, obviously not in Moscow, but it's no longer being ruled out. And do you know what Donald Trump's assessment is? It's like this. We are seeing very good things happening in Ukraine, truly remarkable, and very good things are currently happening across the nation of Ukraine today. He says it looks like something good is happening between Russia and Ukraine. Something good is happening between Ukraine and Russia. Well, despite the continuous MLRS strikes on the Zaporizhzhia region, it is possible that Trump is actually referring to something entirely different.